Welcome to the Your Wealth and Beyond podcast. Today we have Vince Shorb, a leading advocate for financial wellness and the CEO of the National Financial Educators Council, or NFEC. Vince has over 15 years experience and a mission to combat financial illiteracy. Vince has led the development of 2,500 financial education programs and 80 plus assets. Join us, listeners, as we dig in today on the impact of Vince, your work in reshaping financial literacy worldwide. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Andrew.
This is a financial literacy, I think, a topic that is, for us and for you, your passion. But, one of the areas we've seen over the years is, unfortunately, they don't teach financial literacy in the school systems. And it's just one of those areas that no matter how much we press, they don't do it. So before we jump in and talk about all the good things that you've been doing over the last almost decade and a half, where's this passion? Where did it come from for you to get out there and create such a good company here to combat a problem that we all know is there and it's not going away anytime soon?
Yeah, really, it started in high school. I was like, why am I learning this subject? I'll never need it. I knew that then. When I talk to high school students now, they feel the same way. I don't care how cells reproduce. I don't care about the periodic table of elements. I can care less about geometry. If I need something, I'll look it up online. And that frustration grew even more. We have a board member who's a high school student, so he represents the youth. I compared his report card with mine. Granted, there's a 30-plus age difference there. He's taking the same subjects that I took 30 years ago. Super frustrating. And, the goal is really to get relevant information that's going to protect these kids so they're not making the same dumb mistakes I did when I moved out on my own, and so that they can start to invest early and plan their future, which is really, it's not just money. It's relationships, it's emotional stability, it's overall health. All these things impact, and yet schools fail to address it.
No, that's great. And it's just sad to see that they're doing the same thing year after year. I think was that the definition of insanity, right?
True.
Did you so you made some mistakes. You didn't really, spend the time like a lot of us did growing up in grade school and in high school. But do you have any recollection in what family taught you about money, or did you see mistakes that loved ones made? What's some of your earliest memories that you have with money, whether good or bad?
Yeah, some very positive experiences. My mom was on a lower risk management side, so I took a lot of skill sets from her, keeping risk low. My dad was more of a, hey, let's take risk. My grandfather was very entrepreneurial. My other grandfather was very frugal. I learned a lot of good things, and in fact, it inspired me to start really studying about real estate and entrepreneurship and businesses at a very young age. It was when I was 19, I bought my first piece of real estate, and so things looked really good early on. And the thing I loved most about it was people were asking me about it. How did I do it? What was the steps? Bought my second one at age 20. And so I had early success, but then I started getting a little too excited, pulled out a lot of money in cash advances on my credit card to make more riskier investments. Sounded great at the time because I was running off this high of success, and it hit me. It cost me, but it was a tremendous learning experience. I wouldn't change that past for anything. And it just taught me a lot about money, and really inspired when I look back into starting this company. I went up to visit my mom, and I was in financial services for 15 years, and I felt I was just putting Band-Aids on people. And she said, hey, you always were inspired about talking with my friends and family member about money and finances. And really that led me down this path here today. And really it was during that time that was the initial embers of this fire that's burning now.
Yeah, and to make those mistakes, to have some success, and then to make those mistakes when you were young, didn't have as much responsibility versus 19, 20 versus 45, and you've got family to support. So it's always good to get those learning curves out of the way at a young start there. So you were in the financial services industry prior to jumping in and following your passion?
Yeah, that was a big thing. And my last stint was in the mortgage side of things. And, it was during really great times, during the market, and rates were great. And I felt like I was helping people, right? I was like really consolidating debt, getting them low interest rates, lowering their payments, and I felt really good. Work out a budget for them. I went beyond the normal steps of a typical mortgage broker, and work out their budget. Really had this vision for them saving and really changing their life. And then I got hit many times with people coming back 4, 5, 6, 8 months later. Hey, I need 50 grand more. I need 100 grand more. What'd you do? We had you in a great position. Your debt was down. You had one low payment. You had a new plan in place that was going to take care of your goals. And now you're coming back. Why? Oh, I bought a car, went on a trip, did this and that. And they just didn't treat it as real. And that's when I felt, hey, I need to do more. And I realized when talking to these people, logic didn't work. It was behaviors and habits that they established over that time. And so when we originally founded the company, we were the National Youth Financial Educators Council because I want to focus on the youth, helping them proactively avoid these problems. We obviously since expanded, now we're the National Financial Educators Council. But yeah, that was the whole purpose behind that, was really to help people gain the knowledge they need to address the behaviors, to address those habits that they formed and make differences in their life.
Yeah. Yeah, and in our industry, it's usually in the financial services side, we're working with individuals or families that have already done a lot of that hard work where they have built it up and accumulated, and they don't necessarily need all of well, they still probably need behavioral, but it's more of helping them optimize. And I think that's part of the problem with the industry is that the people that need it the most, as they are learning from their mistakes or what's been ingrained in them, that there's nobody out there to provide that type of guidance and assurance that they're on the right track and helping to make good behavioral changes that become habits. And so that ultimately is, I think, still an issue in our industry itself. So it's fantastic that you stepped back and, pulled that over in regards to what you saw was the lacking of the behavioral and the financial literacy and creating the programs associated with helping people make good decisions short term, but then also long term.
Yeah, and to your credit, it's important to find that relationship that continues your education and somebody is producing education content so they can continue to grow. With the ultra wealthy, the wealthier people, they've figured things out, right? They're good. I see a lot of them being concerned with their kids and saying, hey, I've done this. I've built this. I've addressed these challenges in my life. I've made it to this point so our family's secure. Now I'm worried if my kid's a good steward of money. So I get that quite a bit from that level of people.
And so what is some of the things that you would instill in that individual to help bring some of the habits that they maybe are a lot better at than their kids? And, with Gen Z now, it's a lot of this YOLO, live for the life right now and getting their information from TikTok. So what's some of the advice that you would give to a family that is, maybe has accumulated wealth, but hasn't maybe felt confident that they've instilled that same ethic inside their family that will be probably receiving this in a wealth transfer at a later date?
Yeah, I think it's a big motivator from the ultra wealthy and wealthy are to make a better life for their family and their kids, right? And so they create a nice, easy life, and easy times breed people that can't handle hard times sometimes. So I always suggest, hey, starting them with chores and building their work ethic early on, from as young as age 3, 4, getting them in the habit of contributing to the family through chores and work, getting them to contribute to household bills. So if you have a 7-year-old, each month when you're paying them for their chores, having them pay a little bit for the house, a little bit for the car, and being able to explain these. We can get into increased levels of complexity as they get into high school, cell phone, and break down lights and all that stuff. Also saving for the short term and long term. So instead of when your kid wants something at the store, they want this bike. Okay, hey, great. Do you have the money for the bike, right? Okay, when you have the money, we can go buy that. And every time they go to the store until then, they're tempted. Oh, I might want this teddy bear. Okay, you can buy that teddy bear. It's your money, but I thought you wanted a bike. So we can use that as real teachable moments. The skill sets and the habits, it's like a muscle, right? If you don't exercise that muscle, they don't develop. So I think, although a lot of people in a good situation financially, they want to make a better life for their kid, the way to make a long, better life is by instilling positive habits at an early age.
That's great. And how does the council, how do you guys do that? Like, what's it look like in all these different programs that you've created? Is it where they are doing it themselves and walking through the, tutorials that you do have, or are they getting coached? What's kind of the premise been when you started with the mission of helping to create better habits and financial literacy and those type of things? Like, what's it look like?
Yeah, when we were originally founded, it was boots on the ground conducting programs for parents, for schools, for nonprofits, and we had a lot of success. We started to do celebrity events that had thousands of people out at events, and then groups, nonprofits, schools, financial service people started to ask, hey, can we use your materials? So our model really shifted, and it shifted for a few reasons. One, we wanted to be able to scale and to reach all these communities. I was living on the road, I never had to buy a shampoo or soap because I had a hotel, right? And I was living on the road. I was unable to reach the amount of people I wanted to. So now what we do is we train and certify educators and coaches in local communities that want to bring this to their community, their family, and really serve in that manner. And the nice thing is, I talk with people with all different backgrounds, retirees, entrepreneurs, financial services, faith-based groups, nonprofits, but they all share one similar objective, which is, how do I help these kids avoid the problems I went through, or how do I help them become self-sufficient, contributing members of society? I think that's the overarching goal that we're trying to establish, and our network of advocates and educators and communities is really the backbone of our organization now.
And so it comes from individuals that are not just in the financial services industry. These could be teachers, these could be engineers, it could be a whole swath of different types of industries where they know that this is a value add, and by not having to go reinvent the wheel and being able to utilize what you guys have as the framework, then being able to get into the schools or to the non-for-profits, it seems to be making it easier for them, and I guess as turnkey as possible.
Yeah, that's exactly it. When we started, we did not want to create all these materials and go through the accreditation process and all that. It was just a very daunting task. And we wanted to just use other people's material. Well, like, hey, we want to use our brand, but your material, is that possible? And that was not out there, and it still isn't today. So, our goal is to help, these people build their businesses or their nonprofit name or whatever their organization is, and really build a connection with their community under their brand. And we just support them so they don't have to, like you said, reinvent the wheel.
And are you guys getting funding from charitable gifts, or how do you guys stay afloat to make sure that these programs are getting disseminated down to the right people?
Yeah, we two models. One model is, hey, the organizations that can afford, individuals or organizations that can afford our services, purchase it from us.
Okay.
We have low-end options to, enterprise options there. The second way is through sponsorship. So we have a state campaign. We actually just launched our Ohio chapter of the Financial Educators Council. I know you're a Cleveland guy there, and originally, and so we just launched that here back in October. So our state chapters, we have 5 now. We're going to be expanding to about 18 over the next year, is a sponsorship model. So those people that want this in their community but don't have the time to invest, right? Because I don't want to go talk to schools, or I don't have midday to go teach classes for 6 hours. They sponsor these community campaigns, so we're able to provide those services in local communities with help of our graduates and certified educators and partners there. So those are the two distinct models. The overarching goal of both really is, how do we increase access to quality financial education, and how do we advocate and promote this while building relationships in the community that will help us sustain and scale.
That's great. So when we think about values and money, what and ingraining that in at a young age, what's that look like if we were trying to explore aligning spending and financial goals with personal values that can lead to a greater fulfillment or greater purpose? What's some of the tips or strategies that you can give to the listeners if they haven't gone down and reviewed your program? What's kind of a simple start?
Yeah, it's a really great question, by the way. I think that's a key motivator for everything we do in life. And I think a lot of people, especially kids today, they're so influenced by advertisers. billions of dollars are spent annually targeting little kids to build this brand loyalty and to see these commercials that's really hitting them from a psychological perspective on deep things. If you don't have these shoes, you're not as cool, you're not as popular, you're going to miss out on all these good times. This kid has some gum and he's having all this great time. And before age 8, kids can't distinguish commercial and non-commercial content. So the first thing I always tell is, hey, is this really your value? Or was it something that somebody told you was your value? So getting that deeper introspection on what your true values are, I think, is really key. And really, when it comes down to values, we look at the hierarchy of needs, right? Hey, is our security needs met? Is our, which is like, safety, security? Is our physiological needs met? Food, water, shelter, those things. Is our self-esteem needs met? And we see a big thing with money and people's self-esteem. If they're not in a position where they're, know that they can take care of themselves and their family, it really hits their self-esteem. And then the top of this pyramid is the self-actualizing needs, right? Until we have those base needs met, if we're living in a middle of a turmoil and just chaos around us, it's hard to think about what our true values are. So our goal is, hey, make sure that they can meet their basic needs and invest some time into reflection on who they are, what they want to do, and what their purpose is in this world. And that's always ongoing conversation that needs some time and thought dedicated to. But until you have if you're working 5 jobs, have 3 kids, and you have no time and you're worried about getting evicted from your home, you're definitely not putting any time into what your true values are. So our goal with really teaching about money is, hey, let's take care of your basic needs so you can invest into more important things, whether it be thinking about your values, your spirituality, you're wanting to help other people, whatever that may be. Let's get you to that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And you look at, we talked a little bit about TikTok, but just social media in general. And it's not just the kids that it's affecting. You look at the studies, and really since late 2008, 2009, a lot of people are just feeling unhappy because they're seeing the best that all of their friends or loved ones are putting out there. And obviously, as you know, that's not reality, but it gets you thinking, wait, I didn't go on that vacation. We couldn't afford that. We're not as good as them. And there's just that constant tug and pull of, well, what am I doing? Am I doing something wrong? Even though we know that doesn't buy anybody happiness, it's a constant struggle. I have a daughter now that's almost 18, so watching them grow up in a world that you and I fortunately didn't have to. True. A little bit more in that analog days. So I assume for you guys that you're continually trying to optimize the way your programs work to help compete against that, because think of that information and being thrown at them. It's hard to think of purpose and long-term planning and giving money, which we all know when we give our time or money, pretty hard not to feel better about yourself after you do that.
True.
And I think in our industry as well as in a lot, but it's being a therapist. It's helping them understand, like you said earlier, like what do we need for our basic needs, and then coming up with this framework so that they can set themselves up for success. And starting that early is the key in making sure those habits continue on.
Very true. And I think the positive side of this social age, and I've been kind of hitting on the schools and advertisers. I think the one positive thing is we have access to information. Now, is it good information, bad information? We need to discern that. But the beauty is, when I grew up, I couldn't watch your podcast, right? I had to go to the library, look up Dewey Decimals, find some book that was outdated 20 years and get that. I couldn't look. I did research on encyclopedias. I don't want to age myself, but that was life then. I tell these high school students nowadays, they're like, what's that, right? They have no clue. So I think the beauty is, hey, we can listen to, find a podcast that we like. We can find an author that we like. We can find some TikTok short format that's giving good quality information that's inspiring us to better things. So I think that's the positive thing now. It takes self-control to stay off the, dumb side of TikTok and other apps, and focus on the growth and learning. But if we can inspire that, And Neil deGrasse Tyson said something the other day on Joe Rogan podcast, which was interesting. He said, the school system's the absolute failure because students leave not wanting to learn more. They're partying when school's done. And I think he said that the true measure of a successful school would be a school where the kids leave and they're like, man, I want to learn more. I'm so inspired. I'm so hungry to learn. And we find this when kids find their passion, right? When they see things that they want to do. Like, let's say they want to start a business or start a influencer channel. They're learning, they're picking up videos, they're learning the editing, they're putting it online, they're learning the marketing. So I think a lot of education could be really shifted if we can tailor that education into what inspires them and really just build this this excitement for education, as opposed to, oh God, I got to go to history class.
Yeah. And that's, I look back to the first business I started was a window washing business when I was, 16. And, being able to get out there, boots on the ground, and figure out how to, get customers, and then, focus on money coming in versus going out. Not saying that everybody needs to be an entrepreneur, but do you guys see in your teachings and with the impact that you guys have had, trying to engage the younger individuals to start thinking about what is their passion, and does starting any type, it doesn't have to be a big business, starting any type of business at a young age can help set yourself up for success.
Yeah, I love that you're a young entrepreneur, and that is evident today. You have the skill sets. So a lot of people in the financial literacy sector just look at financial literacy as the money management side. How do I manage my money? How do I budget? But we include income and entrepreneurship. I think income is, if you don't have income, what are you going to manage? If you don't have income, what are you going to invest? So income side is critical, and we group entrepreneurship in there as a path. And again, being able to help kids explore their passion and career interest, I think that's a very important role of parents and also schools, because if we look at how many kids start college and switch their major multiple times, it's a large percentage, and it's very costly to them. I was one of them. And so if we can have them explore what it's like to be that lawyer, right? And a lot of, I worked with a lawyer in the mortgage industry. He was very excited. He went through all law school. When he got into the real space on what he did on a daily basis, he's like, why did I do that, right? He has 6-figure debt, and he didn't want to do it. So if we could have put him in that position to experience what that was, it might have saved him many years and a lot of grief. So that career exploration, I think, is key. And I think there's opportunities to help these kids learn what their interest is. And there's an interesting study. They compared kids in China versus kids in the U.S. Kids in China, the top 5 was like engineer, astronaut. It was all like big, high level, mainly STEM type professions. In the U.S., it was social influencer was one, athlete, celebrity. The only one of like a job that they had a chance of getting was teacher. And we had a board meeting, and we were talking about this, and we're like, why is teacher up there? And really, it's the only one that they've been exposed to on a mass scale. We're like, oh, that's a job I want to do, right? They haven't been exposed to the millions of other professions out there, or even the millions of other subset of professions. Hey, you want to be a social influencer? Well, maybe you just do the marketing for them, or maybe you handle, their social accounts. So that lack of exposure here to different career paths, I think is really hurting people. In addition to entrepreneurship and even side hustles, all those things I think are great things to teach kids at a young age to give them opportunities. You don't have to go get a career job if you don't want. If you want to do Uber Eats and so forth for a few years while you figure things out and continue to gain knowledge by watching podcasts and studying, investing, and going to these seminars, wonderful. There's many different ways to live, and I think the more ways we can expose, then they can find the path that's unique to them, and that inspires them to continue pushing forward.
Yeah, and that helps them too to realize that, hey, maybe I don't need college. You know, college has always been the last 30 years. I need to go to college, and most people get out and have, as we're seeing, the debt upon debt upon debt, and then ultimately they don't get the career path that they thought. And teaching from your side is, okay, well, let's find what we're passionate about, and maybe it's going to trade school, maybe it's getting, you know, the putting the time in at a young age. And you know, there's a lot of great careers out there that you don't have to have that, you know, 100,000+ debt strapped to you, where you can make a good wage and think of it as that long term. And I think there's starting to be that pendulum shift a little bit away from that, especially as college is not getting any cheaper anytime soon, and some of the flaws that we're seeing in the higher education programs right now.
Very true, and I think the same problem that impacts high school carries over to college. The first few years of college, it's all classes you don't need. I had to take geology, just random classes I took that were just an advanced math. I didn't need that. I had to go to the math tutor lab. I ended up paying them so I'd pass. I didn't even do the work. I'm like, pay them. They did all my homework for me. I didn't pass any tests. But, you know, and then only the last 2 years did I take anything relevant to what I was studying. And of that, I'd say 70% of the teachers had never any real world experience. Mm-hmm. So one of my biggest regrets is actually going to college. Now, if you're going to be, you know, something like that requires an advanced college degree, you need to go down that path. But for me, I was very entrepreneurial. I think that, in fact, took away from my entrepreneurial spirit during the time. I always had businesses, but I wasn't able to focus the time and time it needed to really, you know, make those things grow at that time, because I was school, work, business. And if I could take it back, I would have eliminated college. But I always felt that was a safety net. But the funny thing was, the day my graduation thing came in the mail, I didn't go to the graduation. I just tore it up, threw it away. I'm like, this is useless. Now I'm moving forward with life. And that was a very, fulfilling moment for me. But at the same time, I was like, damn, if I had something to do over, that's what I would have done. And again, for some kids, it's great. I don't want to give general broad advice, but that's why career exploration and exploration of people's passions is so critical young.
And you mentioned earlier, just a little bit ago, about, you know, as we start making more money and we try to keep up with the Joneses, and that, you know, continually, all of a sudden you're making a lot more than you ever thought you would. But then you find yourself in an extreme amount of debt. And so that's that we call it the slow but sure creep up of, you know, your lifestyle. And whether you're trying to keep up with the neighbors down the street because it looks like they got the brand new car, the new house, they're going on the vacations, we don't know what's happening underneath things. So what's some of the, you know, tips or, recommendations as we start getting into our, you know, maybe late 20s, early 30s, start making some better money than we ever thought we would? What are some of the things that your program teaches so that they don't have that lifestyle creep, and that they, you know, focus on the short term, yes, happiness, but also then what's the longer term provision for them to have the success that they can control their own destiny?
Yeah, the lifestyle creep is real. And just to piggyback on that, the keeping up with the Joneses and the social media aspect you talked about before, the Joneses used to be the people on the block, the people at our work, the people that we knew. Now the Joneses are worldwide because we're able to follow people and have relationships over the internet, right? So the Joneses is much bigger nowadays, so that creep is a lot bigger. And just going back to my time in the mortgage industry, we were all making a ton of money. I always was very frugal. That's just by nature. I'm a frugal guy, made investments and so forth, but lived at the same place that I bought when I was 20, never sold and never bought a bigger place. All my buddies, on the other hand, new place, second home, boat, RV, fifth wheel, motorcycles, all that. It was fun because I went with them, right? But got to go to their second home and so for all that. I brought food and I paid my fair share, but they had that mortgage payment ongoing. I just went and paid and enjoyed myself. But I was telling them, like, guys, you see what's going on. We're at record low interest rates. You see what all the clients are going through, right? All the clients are making good money. You see their credit report. You see their assets. You see the trouble they're in. And, what's going on here? They just thought the party would last forever. Rates went up. Then they sold their home, sold their boat, or got it taken, right? One of the two. So even when people are in that and they're seeing hundreds and hundreds of credit reports and back ends of people's finances, that lifestyle creep is real. For me, I say, hey, there's ways we can live, right? And hey, if you want to live that high flying life and are willing to pay the consequences later, cool. That's on you. That's your decision. But if security, if making sure your family's taken care of, making sure you can sleep well at night. And I know some of my buddies that were super stressed out and they were still doing this. And so I think that goes back to the behaviors and habits. But the first thing I tell people, say, what type of lifestyle do you want to live? And it's cool. If you want to be a high flyer, high risk, high consequence, and you can live through the struggle, cool with you. I like to always have a security net, more on the frugal side. I'll take my risk when it comes to investing and so forth, like anybody, but I know I'm going to have a place to sleep. I know my basic needs are met. I know I can take care of my family, and that's comfortable for me. So I just want people to know, probably what you do with your clients too, is, hey, where's your risk tolerance, right? What are you willing to give up and sacrifice to achieve a certain type of goal? And then build a plan around there. I think a lot can happen through backwards design. And most people that don't have qualified and trusted advisors, they don't have a plan. So if you don't have an end plan in mind, how are you going to design a life and even a budget to meet that need? So, for those people that don't have a plan, I say start there. What's your plan? What's your goals? And then also think about, hey, what type of risk are you willing to take? And overall, what type of lifestyle are you willing to live? And what would you sacrifice for this, whatever your big picture plan is? So it's very unique to everybody. I don't have one cookie cutter answer. It's very unique to everybody. But I definitely encourage people to explore at least those three concepts to determine what's right for them.
And with your programs, because budgeting is obviously a very big thing, no matter where you are, a younger kid or getting into the workforce or making good money. What type of, in your program, how do you teach that? Is there a technology that you've developed to help them understand the budget and the fixed costs and discretionary costs and be able to keep track of that? What's that look like?
Yeah, really, I think a primary overarching theme of all of our material and what we teach is the psychology of money, right? And I think that's really the key.
It's a good book, by the way.
Yeah, it is a good. Yeah, it's an important thing to understand why you're making decisions and so forth. We don't have any special budgeting tool because there's some great ones on the market, but we encourage people to find the tools they like. Hey, I'm personally, I like my spreadsheets. I'm an Excel guy. I like to download, I like to review spreadsheets. That's me. Other people like those fancy reports and things all like that. That's other people. So find the way that you like to operate. My mom, a great budgeter, but she still, every time she uses her credit card, she writes down in her checkbook how much she spent. And she balances it out what's in the budget. Very old school, and she sits down every month and does it, but it works for her, right? So whatever method works for you and what's comfortable for you, and some people like the technology side. Other people, like my mom, like that physical side, be able to see. And so really anything that works for you, we encourage people to find the path that works for them, because if we're telling a non-tech person to go get mint.com, or now Credit Karma's buying them out, Credit Karma, thing, and they don't like technology, they're not going to go on it. So finding the method to manage your money that's in alignment with how you are comfortable with operating, I think, is key. So that's the big overarching theme. It's, hey, there's different ways you can manage your money, different lifestyle. It's finding the one that you're going to do, then getting that calendar so you're organized, so you know what to do when, and let things operate for you. Then making sure that you're coming back at the set times to reevaluate, replan, and move forward, or at any major life stage as well. A big thing we try to encourage with our learners is, hey, when there's major life changes, you need to come back to your budget. It's not just one and done. Something major happens, you need to come back there and make those necessary adjustments. Otherwise, it's just an outdated piece of paper that's an archive. You need to keep it relevant and updated.
Yeah. Yeah, as we move into more of a cashless society, on the notion of when we used to have cash, right? It became more real when you actually have money, or the checks, the checkbook, and balancing your checkbook. I mean, there's probably 1% of kids under 25, balance their own checkbook. So
True.
that's one of the other areas. Your constant battle is that it's not real when we swipe the card or we use Apple Pay, and it's just in the ether there. And so that makes our job as educators even harder, because it isn't as real as it is as if you are putting that money out. And, I think this is a whole other thing, with the betting now nationally, and these kids are getting into betting. It's not as real as like when you are in Vegas and having to put down $20 versus I'm just going to, $20. It's not real. It's
Very
hard.
true. Yeah, it is scary. And, the casinos, I think it's going to that casino system, right? Initially it's buying the chips. It doesn't feel as real. There's always a little bit of disconnect there, but it's still real. Now, what you're saying, hey, they're moving online, it's virtual. It's kind of same with the national debt. It's virtual. Just push a button, one more zero, another trillion out the door. And so it is interesting. It is scary. And it is something that, hey, this new technology we need to educate kids on, giving them the path. It's going back to what they're teaching in the schools. So the schools that do have financial literacy programs, we review most of them, and they still have check writing in a lot of those programs, which is like, anybody write checks? I think your numbers are probably accurate. Very single-digit kids use checkbooks, so pretty scary what they're teaching, even when they are teaching financial literacy.
So we talked a little bit about Psychology of Money, which is a great book that everybody should read. Are there any other books about money and the relationship with money that you would recommend a listener to, as we're heading into the holiday season now? It's a great time where people are going to have some time to maybe focus on their goals and look to their New Year's resolutions. Anything top of mind that you would recommend?
Yeah, my first book that really was a big one for me was Cash Flow Quadrant. Kiyosaki. That was one that still, it's like, that was a big part of how I think today. So I'd highly recommend that, especially for younger people, and for any age really. But I think in my early 20s, I got a hold of that, and I'm like, wow, that's a different way to look at assets and liabilities. And that really stood out to me. So Brian Tracy's Psychology of Money, great book as well. And I think that'd be another one that impacted me early on too. But I do like that Cash Flow Quadrant, just because it put my perspective on real estate, business, and different investments into categories that made it easier for me to understand. So yeah, I would definitely, if any parents out there have kids, that might be one to put on their book list for the holidays.
Wonderful. We'll have that in the show notes. So what's the next 3 to 5 years for National Financial Educators Council? What's your vision? Where do you see it going? What's your what motivates you daily?
Yeah, number one, we want to be in every state. We're already in 60 countries. We're in every state with our graduates and people. However, we want our chapters in every state. Again, we were in Ohio, Texas, Florida, Massachusetts, and California. We're going to continue that expansion, and within the 5-year mark, we'll be in every state. The main goal there is to increase access to quality programming. We're an accredited organization, the only one I know of in our vertical, and so we want to really maintain that high level of standards. So what we're teaching aligns with education methodologies. It's not just present, and lecture people. There's ways to teach that are more effective, and we want to really encourage that. So really increase access, elevate the quality of education, so it's more rigorous, so kids are actually getting use out of that. From the advocacy standpoint, we're big advocates for getting financial literacy into schools. That's a big campaign of ours. So we're more on the lobbying side, the working with these legislatures to really drive financial literacy into schools. Until that's done as well, we're encouraging parents. We're always promoting parents being actively involved in teaching your kids, because if you don't do it, nobody will. So at this point, we want you to be very involved. And then the last part's really about relationships, really bringing this to new relationships outside the industry. Right now, financial literacy is kind of its own industry. Where we see financial literacy is, hey, there's people like yourself that are putting out great information and that people resonate with, so you're part of this movement. So we're really trying to expand it to incorporate the broader vision of literacy. There's not just one way to learn. Some people like to read books, some people like to attend a class. There's a million ways to learn, so making sure that, hey, we're inclusive of all these different types of people, these verticals, these channels. I don't care if you're doing a TikTok that's giving a great tip. Wonderful. You're a part of the family, right? So increasing those relationships and then really getting people behind one common vision, which I think is making sure our youth today graduate and enter adulthood with the skills they need to be self-sufficient and contributing members of society. If so, I think we can resolve a lot of societal problems. And I really think personal finance is the biggest issue that people face today. And we have an opportunity right now to make a difference. And I want to be a leading person in that movement to make that difference.
Wonderful. Well said. And, I do love the values that you guys are guided by: empowerment, independence, and leadership. Those three resonate no matter where you are, but especially for the young kids out there that are trying to find their way. So super proud of what you guys have built. Looking forward to seeing what the next 5 years looks like and trying to get your programs out to as many people as possible, not just here in the U.S., but in the globe. And all of it can only be good things to provide people the value and money and happiness and create good habits. So, being in the weeds for 20 plus years in this industry, I do appreciate what you've been able to build and what you're going to continue to grow into.
I appreciate it. And, one of the things I like most about this industry is nobody's against me, right? I don't have people picketing or wanting to cancel. Nobody's like, stop financial literacy, don't teach it. That's the beauty of this. And I think, I think that's the beauty of it. But also, I think that's kind of holding the industry back, when there's not a enemy, right? If there's an enemy, there's controversy. When you have 50-50, there's media. So it almost needs people against it. So if any of your listeners are against it, be vocal, right? we need to create some buzz behind that. But I do enjoy that. Hey, pretty much any room I go into, it's something that brings all sides together. I don't care if I'm talking Democrat, Republican, Independent, doesn't matter. Oh yeah, wish my kid was taught about money. So it's a nice thing to unite people. My hope is, hey, we can all get united behind this cause and really make a lasting difference for the most important generation of our time, especially when we consider all the new technological advances, the potential displacement of workers. I think it's a very critical time. We need to make sure that, hey, they're prepared for this next phase. Technology's increasing at a rapid rate. We see it. I'm just in the years I've been alive, it's like, wow, if I were to look back at this is, my computer now compared to my Tandy and playing Dig Dug on that and a word, basically a glorified word processor. I could do a million things with this thing now. And yet again, education system has been teaching the same subjects for 100 years, and now we have this. Absolutely a joke, and that's really what I want to get through is, hey, let's elevate our education so kids are getting relevant information, and we can make this world a better place.
Wonderful. Well, I think you said it all. We really appreciate it. Our listeners and viewers from the Your Wealth and Beyond podcast, this resonates fully. So please review the show notes, contact Vince and his team, and let's help to create education on the financial side of things to all corners of this country and beyond. And there's no better time to start teaching good habits on the financial side. The earlier, the better. So hopefully, listeners, you got a couple good nuggets today. Vince, we really appreciate your time and look forward to seeing what you're going to do in the future.
Andrew, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You are very welcome. All right, listeners, we all the show notes will be below on the video as well as on the podcast, so you can get a hold of Vince and his team. And stay tuned for another new episode of Your Wealth and Beyond later this month. Happy planning, everybody.